Greetings everyone, Brad here with Mild-Mannered EDC. I hope you're all doing really well out there. Today we're going to talk about the best budget EDC knife that you don't own. That's right. That's right. This is the Ironfly Zesty. There it is, huh? Look at this big old beauty. So this is a very, very cool knife. And we're going to talk a little bit about why you probably don't own it, but why you might be able to in the future. So I think that's why I kind of wanted to do this video. Now, this isn't the first review or anything out there on the Zesty, but I kind of waited on it for a little while just because I wanted to get some more details about it and sort of what the long-term plans were for Ironfly, etc. For those of you who don't know, Ironfly is the sub-brand sort of budget arm of Kunwu Knives, a brand that I've come to like quite a bit. They've had a few offerings. They've got a Kickstarter that just finished up recently, as at least as in terms of when this video posted. But, you know, I've really been a fan of Kunwu. I kind of got in with them in the beginning in terms of wanting to support their knives and really enjoying what they're bringing to the market. In fact, one of the biggest things they're bringing to the market really is substantial value for the quality of the product that you're getting. So, you know, when they said we're going to do a budget version of some of our knives, I was like, wow, how much how much less expensive can you go and still deliver a really quality knife? But they did manage to do that here with the Zesty. So at least in their new budget line. So there you go. Quick caveat on these kind of knives. I don't tend to do a ton of reviews on knives that are either, you know, discontinued or really hard to get or something along those lines, just because I know it can be frustrating, right? You know, I've certainly, you know, clicked on videos and watched them and went, wow, what an awesome knife. Oh, I can't get it. You know, and that can be frustrating and disappointing and a lot of those other things. So I tend not to review those kind of knives here on my channel. But that said, there are, you know, sort of nuances even to that rule, right? For example, I've got an upcoming review on my Brian Nadeau Evo Typhoon. And yeah, while the Evo Typhoon is a 1 year, you know, sort of production offering from Brian Nadeau, he has done you know, he seems to do a production run every year, right, of one of his designs. And so a review can give you a sense of the kind of quality, value, materials, et cetera, that you might get on a future project that he might be working on. So I do think there's some value, though, in that type of review. So anyways, just to kind of give you some clarity around, maybe I just made it more complicated, I don't know, or more muddy, but
yep.
That's sort of where my mind is on this whole process. So anyways, the Ironfly Zesty. Let's talk about this sucker. It is a knife that was available as a Kickstarter campaign, as with all Kunwu knives, and this one is no exception. Sold out very fast. I think there were like 350 some of these that were ordered through that, and then I think they made a certain number above and beyond that to just have as stock. As it sits right now, these aren't really available that I've been able to find, at least not on their website, which looks like it's kind of struggling anyway at the moment. I did talk to Sergio, the guy who's sort of in charge of Kunwu / Ironfly here, and he did kind of assure me they're in the process of some transition in terms of, yes, you know, they're going to want to make more of these Zesties, and they will be available eventually, but two, I think both Kunwu and Ironfly are moving sort of their online platform to another sort of venue. So, you know, as that company announces those things, you know, go follow them on Instagram or Facebook or wherever, and kind of keep up with where they are and that sort of stuff. But bottom line is this knife will be available again, hopefully in the not too distant future. So while you may not own it right now, there's a chance you could in the future, and that's why I want to do this review.
Enough chit chat.
So what do we got here with this Ironfly Zesty? Well, let's go ahead and I'm going to put it here. We'll do a couple size comparisons, then we'll do some specs, and then we'll, well, actually, let's reverse that. We'll do some specs and then some size comparisons, and then we'll get underway with the review. So from a spec standpoint here, we have a blade length of 3.62 inches. So this is not a small knife. It's, you know, large, medium, large size knife, depending on what your own parameters are there. So yeah, good size blade. You've got a blade thickness here of 0.13, a handle length when it's closed up of 4.44 inches, a handle thickness of 0.61. I think that's a little bit due to some bulging here on the micarta scales, but you know, anyways, it's a little over half an inch, so it's not a not a, you know, skinny winny. And that gives you an overall, when it's all opened up here, tip to tail of 8.07 inches. So like I said, pretty good sized knife. And then a weight of 4.23 ounces. So it's not the lightest weight knife out there by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a pretty substantial knife. So we'll talk about that as we go through. So how about a couple of size comparisons that hopefully will be useful? Here is a QSP Penguin. There you go. And how about a Civivi Backlash? So there you go. You can see it's definitely more in backlash territory and quite a bit bigger than the Penguin here. So hopefully that gives you a little perspective. And you know, while we're here, let's use a Swiss Army knife. That's always a good point of comparison too. So there you go. That's kind of what we're dealing with this knife in terms of its size. All right, or at least how it compares to other knives out there. Okay, so let's go ahead and get underway with this classic mild-mannered review where we'll talk about the blade and then the action, the scales and hardware, and then the ergos and the carry. So the blade on this Ironfly Zesty, there you go, very, very nice blade. It is a satin-finished, full flat ground VG10 steel blade. And you can see that VG10 pretty clearly right there, along with the Zesty name. And then that big old Ironfly logo, which kind of reminds me a little bit of the Essie. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm off. But just kind of size and placement, etc. Drop point, pretty nice classic drop point there. I mentioned the VG10, but I also think it's important to mention that it is at a Rockwell of between 59 and 61. And that puts this, I think, right up there in the territory around 14C28. And you know, whether what you prefer there or not, I guess that's really your decision. I think they are pretty comparable when heat treated correctly. And in a lot of ways, you know, I think there's a lot to be said for VG10 in terms of ease of sharpening, stainlessness, etc. Not that 14C28N doesn't have some of those characteristics, it certainly does, but there's a reason VG10 is a standard, more budget end steel for a lot of companies, including Spyderco and others, right? Some of their most famous models have used VG10 for a really long time. So it's a good steel. And I think for the price that you're going to pay on this particular knife now on the Kickstarter, I don't think I mentioned that, sorry. On the Kickstarter, you know, I think I paid like 40 bucks or something for this knife. That's crazy! We'll talk about why that's pretty ridiculous going forward in terms of value. But I think outside of that, they were closer to that $60 mark for sort of after the Kickstarter campaign. So anyways, and those numbers could change a little bit, but that's sort of what I recollect at the moment. So there you go. All right, you've got a little bit of jimping on the blade here, a nice attractive swedge. Everything is chamfered very nice and chamfered very nice. The other thing that Kunwu and by extension Ironfly do really, really well is their grinds. They do beautiful grinds. You know, they come razor sharp. They're thin behind the edge. They're even on both sides. It's one of the best things they do. They really do nail their grinds, and I think that's pretty fantastic. And you can see here with the grind termination point, with the choil there, it's just done really, really well. Obviously, the plunge line coming down. So, you know, this is a pretty good looking, classic looking drop point, but with a little bit of flair to it in certain areas. The jimping's, you know, it's there. It's not unnoticeable, but it's also not so crazy that it's going to be ripping up the skin on your finger or anything like that. So anyways, really, really nice blade. I think it's, like I said, all 3.62 inches of it. You're getting a lot there for your money. So let's talk about the action now. Yeah, and you've seen a little bit of that as I've been playing with this. So this is running on ceramic ball bearings, and boy, does it feel like it. I mean, right out of the gate with this knife, it was this. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if you can misflip it. I'm sure you can if you just put nothing there. But boy, the detent is so dialed in, just with no pressure. It still wants to fly out. Put any pressure on it, bang, it's there, right? I mean, it just, yeah, it's really, really, really a good action. And like I said, you get that little bit of drop shuttiness right out of the gate. That's really great. And it's not a, you know, like I said, their detents are so good. I mean, they're not, they don't just shake out at the slightest, you know, downward motion or anything like that. So just a really, really excellently done action in terms of deployment and close and just smoothness overall. So really, really well done there. Now it is a liner lock. as you can see, we got a lockup here of about 25, maybe 30%. No blade play, no blade rock at all there. Nothing to complain about with any of that. So, just by and large, and overall here, you've got a really nice blade being deployed with an excellent action. And again, kind of going back to the Kunwu here, and this was that Kunwu Ronin. Yeah, I mean, you've got the same sort of thing, that awesome detent and just, yeah, very, very, very nice action. So they've dialed that in really well. And I want to point out, using ceramic ball bearings instead of stainless steel
So fancy
is a small attention to detail thing, but in a budget knife, that's a nice touch. I mean, it really is. It really, I think, does add to the sort of smoothness. And you have less issue of worrying about your bearings, potentially getting rusty or something like that. So anyways, just a nice touch. All right, so let's talk about scales and materials here. So scales here, this comes with a burlap micarta. I'll try to get up there so you can get a good view of that. And, with this burlap micarta, it's very, very well finished. I think it's done quite nicely. It's got a good texture and feel to it. I know micarta is kind of all the rage these days. I don't have a ton of stuff in micarta, actually, but I know a lot of people really do enjoy it. And this is nicely well done. It's got some nice contouring. There's kind of a little bit of a palm swell that comes out there. And even that sort of tapers a little bit. So it's thought out, it's designed, and I think I like that quite a bit. So again, you've got this nice burlap micarta. I do believe this also was originally in a OD green option as well. So there you go. You do have stainless steel liners. They do have a bit of a weight reduction in there. I don't know if you can see that. Let me see if I can open this up. I'm sure you're just like, yeah, whatever, I trust you. But yeah, you can see a little bit of weight reduction in there. But at 4.23, it's not like it, made it a featherweight or anything like that. So you do get that. You do have a stainless steel pocket clip here, which is very nice, a wire clip in point of fact. And then it also, then a G10 backspacer with very nice fit and finish there. And then you've got a glass breaker, and that's sort of the one thing on this, and it's got a little ceramic ball on there. Nice, as glass breakers go, this is nicely done. It doesn't poke into your hand, it doesn't hurt, and when you're holding it or deploying or anything like that, you'll notice it actually is what holds the pocket clip in place, and we'll talk about that a little bit in carry. But yeah, I mean, I'm not huge on glass breakers. I definitely don't need them on my knives. Some people really like them, and this may be something that you like, and it speaks to you as an additional sort of tool within a tool, kind of. But as far as they go, this one is done pretty darn well. So while I don't necessarily think it's a necessary item, it's, at least for me, it's done well here. So no complaints there. So there you go. So that's pretty much what we got. You have T8 here in the pivot screw, and then T6 in the other two screws here. But a nice, clean, attractive looking design. I mean, I don't know what you think, but I kind of think overall they did a really nice job with that. So again, scale materials done pretty darn nicely. All right, would have nested liners been a nice touch? Potentially. That would have potentially been a nice way to go. But again, we're talking about a budget knife here, and I think with everything else sort of combined, yeah, anyways, there you go. Now let's talk about ergos and carry. So, it's really, the ergos are quite good. As I mentioned, you've got a bit of a palm swell coming out. The way there's this little bit of a thumb, I don't know what that's, a little bit of a carve out. I don't know if it's thumb, I don't know if I'd go as far as call it a thumb ramp or anything, but it's definitely just, it fits very, very nicely. There maybe is a little bit of a dig in here in terms of on your index finger, if you're really bearing down, but you know what? It's really not too bad at all. So your hand sort of naturally wants to fit into this knife. And because you've got this nice, almost 4.5-inch handle, there's a lot to grab onto. So if you're wearing gloves or anything like that, or have really large hands, this is going to be pretty comfortable. A little bit of a hot spot here off the back end of the wire clip. I know hot spots are somewhat subjective, but wire clips in general have a tendency, at least to give me, a bit of a hot spot. There's just really not a lot of way to do that in terms of just the nature of this 90-degree angle that sort of gets made with the wire clip. So there you go. And then, as I mentioned, nice springiness. You may have noticed this is an ambidextrous tip-up pocket clip, so you can do left hand or right hand. And as I mentioned, the pivot screw, or I'm sorry, the glass breaker is the thing that holds it in. So you take the little glass breaker off and then you swap it around. And you might notice this is kind of that, it's a little bit of an odd shape, so you'll have to kind of use the appropriate socket or something like that to get that off, or a really fine wrench or something potentially. But it is swappable. So there you go. And by the way, since we're looking at this, it's pretty darn centered. Anyways, so, you know, slips in and out of the pocket quite easily, especially for a knife this size. Carries a little heavy. Like I said, I mentioned it's a little bit heavy, and it carries that way. So I'm not going to say it doesn't, because it does. But, you know, overall for the money, like I said, I really feel like this is one of those knives that not a lot of people have. You may have seen it once or twice on YouTube, but I really think, or on Instagram or something like that, but I really think you should be looking at Ironfly and Kunwu in general, but keep an eye on this. You know, if this is something that comes back out, and which supposedly it's going to, you're going to get some additional stock of these come. I think if you're really in the market for a really nicely well-made, nice spec'd, larger size budget knife, man, I mean, look at that. This is really, really good. And, you know, if they continue to kind of build out this Ironfly line, it'll be really interesting to see what they come up with. So, you know, there you go. With that, I hope you've enjoyed this review. I hope this is a knife that if you don't have, you can get your hands on it. If you do have one, let me know down in the comments what you think of it. Am I off base in my bold claims here? But I really do think this is an awesome offering and a really excellent budget knife if you can get one, and hopefully you will be able to soon. So with that, stay safe out there. Be mild-mannered to one another, and all the best.